Hi there, it's Alexandra from the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel and blog, and I'm talking about low maintenance front gardens because, as it happens, I have a very low maintenance front garden and I can't take any credit for it at all because it was actually laid out by our predecessors in the house that we live in, and it's been really beautiful. We've added very little to it, and in fact quite a lot of what we've added has been completely unnecessary. And so I thought it would be nice to go over the rules of low maintenance front gardens and to tell you, in my experience, what has worked and what hasn't. And even if you're not thinking of revamping your front garden completely, you may be thinking of tweaking it or replacing a plant that's died. And I think these principles work just as well for a minor tweakment as they do for a complete renovation. The first rule of a low maintenance front garden, everyone will tell you, is to have only 5 or 6 different kinds of plants in it. And when I look at our front garden, that's exactly what our predecessors planted. There's a row of Bonica roses on either side of the path and also going along the fence to the road. There are nerines across the front of the house, bulbs, and there are also daffodils in the ground which come up in spring. And then there are just 3 kinds of shrub along the side of the garden, which is viburnums, spirea and weigela. And that's it. The next thing to think about is what sort of plants you should have in your garden in terms of your 5 or 6 choices. Now, annuals and bedding plants are famously high maintenance. You have to put them in, water them, deadhead them, dig them up again, etc. So all the advice is definitely avoid annuals and bedding plants in a low maintenance front garden. I have seen advice that you should use perennials in a low maintenance front garden, and they certainly are much lower maintenance than annuals or bedding plants, but they do need some maintenance, and my experience with my Nepeta has made me think that perhaps they're not quite ideal if you really want a very easy lock up and leave front garden. We put these Nepeta in about 5 or 6 years ago, and I should have dug them up and divided them either every year or at least every other year. But I left them for 5 years and they turned into a huge sprawling clump that didn't look as good. And it was such hard work to dig them up. It took my husband about 3 hours to do it, and it was really, I couldn't get them dug up at all. And so if you think about perennials, a lot of them do need something like lifting and dividing every couple of years. They may need staking, they may need protection from snails like hostas, or they may need lifting at the end of the season like dahlias if you live in a cold area. So if you want to really lock up and leave low maintenance front garden, I think you would do what my predecessors in this house did, which is do one which is based on shrubs, including roses, bulbs and perhaps trees. And the most successful thing that we've added to this garden is certainly a tree, as you'll see later on. Now, if you're only going to have 5 or 6 different kinds of plants, the most important thing is to make sure they're all flowering at different times, and that's one of the really successful things that my predecessors did in this garden. The Viburnum bodnantse dawn literally flowers throughout the winter with its little pink flowers. And then in spring the daffodils come up, and actually I have added tulips, which has been great as well. In June the rows of Bonica roses flower in the most fantastic abundance. It's a really showy display. And around mid-July I usually clip them all with shears. It doesn't take very long, and then from about August onwards until Christmas we have a really good second flowering, followed by excellent hips. In October, the nerines come out, and that's a great row of lovely pink nerine baudenii. And the thing is about nerines is they can take quite a long time to get established, and they don't really like disturbance. So actually, a front garden's a really good place for them, because actually if you're going to have a low maintenance front garden, then I think on the whole you won't be doing much digging and not adding many other plants and things. So that's quite a good choice for plants that really just like to be left alone. The other bit of advice you'll see quite widely for low maintenance front gardens is choose a colour theme, and my predecessors chose pink. It might sound a bit much to have every single plant in the garden in pink, but actually if they're all flowering at different times, it'll look great. Or you could choose 2 colours, and you might base those on perhaps the colour of your front door or the brickwork of your house or something like that. Now we have 2 squares of lawn in our front garden, and lawn obviously does require maintenance. You can choose how much maintenance you want to do on your lawn. We just mow it and, take out a dandelion weeder from time to time. But obviously over 16 years, it has deteriorated. If you're a perfectionist about your lawn, the lawn is a lot more work. So in a way, you can have a low maintenance lawn. It just will be a bit scruffy. Of course, a lot of front gardens around me are now using fake turf. And in such a small area, it is, quite a good idea. But they are made of plastic or petroleum products, even though some of them are recycled. And at the end of 25 years, they will have to go to landfill. The other problem is that fake turf will need cleaning. It won't need mowing, but when birds or cats or foxes poo on it, then you'll have to clear it up. There will be leaves in the autumn, and also just general the dust and everything of the city or the town. You have to kind of rake it over from time to time as well. And they are porous, but sometimes water can get trapped, so that could lead to mould. The other problem is that worms are a very important part of our ecosystem, and paving over front gardens or covering them with an artificial surface is not hugely helpful to worms and to wildlife. It doesn't support wildlife. And our front gardens are an important part of supporting wildlife. So there is a balance to be had there. Quite a lot of front gardens I see now have pebbles or slate, and you will once again have to do some maintenance on that. There is no such thing as a surface that doesn't require maintenance, but I think it probably would be less maintenance than lawn, although of course this fashion for slate and pebbles and things is quite recent, so we haven't seen what the long-term issues are. I think you'll obviously have the issue of animal feces. You will definitely get leaves blowing on it, and then of course, dirt, and the question is whether plants will find the cracks and you will have to weed it anyway in the long run. Gravel is a very high maintenance surface as far as I'm concerned, because every gravel I've ever had has needed weeding fairly soon, even if it's over a weed suppressing membrane. Because the weeds land, you need to renew gravel every 5 or 6 years, and obviously the issue with the animal feces is a tricky one. When you are thinking about having a hard surface in your front garden, the other factor to think about is how it affects your house. Because we are east facing, and if you're an east facing or a west facing house, then you will get very bright sunlight either in the mornings or the afternoons. If you have a hard surface like stone or brick or pebble or shingle or slate, then those will retain the heat. And so when the sun passes over, it will continue to heat your house, which in a heat wave is not pleasant. Our front garden is grass and it just doesn't retain the heat at all. Once the heat has passed over the house, the front rooms cool, and in a heat wave that is hugely helpful. So it is worth remembering that, particularly if you've got a west facing house and you don't want the rooms to bake in the night when you're asleep. Another factor that can be environmental, not particularly low maintenance, is climbers. Climbers are hugely useful for wildlife. They are very good protection for your house. We have a Virginia creeper on the back of our house, and in a heat wave, the room covered by the Virginia creeper is much cooler. But all climbers and creepers will need maintenance, and you will probably have to go up on a ladder. You can't allow them to climb up the house and wrap themselves around the gutter, because the sheer weight will mean that the wind brings the guttering down. Having said that, people used to have climbers and creepers on their houses much more, and they were largely got rid of because people thought they were damaging the house. And research now shows that's not necessarily true. Indeed, they can be protective of wind, of rain, and of cold. But they do need keeping under control. So you've got a bit of an environmental versus low maintenance balance there. But of course, a beautiful wisteria or a rose just looks lovely around a house. Right, low maintenance pots for the front of the garden. I do have a video on low maintenance pots. I'll put it in the description below. But in the end, every single pot is going to be higher maintenance than a plant in the ground. You'll need to water it, particularly in hot weather. You may need to feed it, and there'll be a certain amount of clipping and fussing around. So if you truly want as little work as possible in your front garden, no pots. We don't have pots, and actually I don't miss them. However, probably the lowest maintenance plant you can ever plant is a tree. Trees are wonderful. They provide a habitat for wildlife, they improve air quality, and when your tree is in leaf, it's protecting your house from things like wind, cold, excessive heat and things like that. People are worried about planting trees in their front garden. I have planted 2 Malus hoopahensis in the front garden and they do look beautiful. A friend gave them to me. She grew them in a pip. They were about 6 inches high when she gave them to me, and I planted them as if they were any other plant. And now 10 years later they're quite a substantial tree. They're about 20 feet high and they give the house huge presents, and I've even seen people Instagramming our front gate because of them. And they've got blossom in the spring and they've got lovely little crab apples in the autumn, and the birds love them. Now, those are not going to be affecting either the foundations of our house or the pavement or the drains. When new healthy tree roots reach something like a drain or a wall or house, they don't break it apart. If there is already damage, they may start growing into it. But on the other hand, they're not going to cause the damage. That is generally the conclusion that research has come to. But in terms of maintenance, all I have ever done to these trees is look at them once every winter and just removed any branch that isn't going in a direction I want it to go. And that's been incredibly easy. I think we'll all agree that low maintenance is good in front gardens, because although you see your front garden every time you leave your house and every time you get home, you're usually rushing a bit or on the way somewhere, or I am anyway. And I'm always thinking, oh God, I must pull that weed out, and then I don't. And so I think having low maintenance has really, really helped this front garden, because I think we do neglect it more than we neglect the back garden. So if you found this helpful, do please hit like, because that helps me know that you would like to know perhaps more about low maintenance planting. And let me know any of your low maintenance planting tips in the comments below, because we all read the comments and it's really interesting. And if you'd like more ideas, tips and inspiration for your middle-sized garden, do subscribe to the Middlesized Garden YouTube channel. And thank you for watching. Goodbye.